Hello, I'm William Peters, production manager of the Wisconsin Trigger Company, and this is the final part in the series of installing the MK2 trigger. Today I'll be showing you how to set the Overtravel, some other fine-tuning and adjustments, as well as care and maintenance instructions. You may have noticed that your selector switch will not fit past the tail of the trigger once it has been installed along with the hammer, like it would on a factory trigger. This is because extra material has been intentionally left there in order to let you get a proper fit. Now I'm going to start taking this apart here, starting with the hammer, and make sure you release it. Overtravel is the distance the trigger travels after the hammer is released. Some people prefer a lot of it, some people prefer as little as possible. So what I'm going to do now, after I finish disassembling this, is show you a couple of different methods on just how to achieve that. Please proceed with caution. It is easier to remove material than it is to add it. And what I mean by that is that you want to take off small amounts at a time and check the fit each time until you've got it right where you want it. Also, be aware that removing too much material will take away safety engagement, which, as I'm sure you know, is extremely unsafe. Keeping that in mind, we'll go shave some of this tail off. This is the hardest way of the three I will show you. But if you're careful, you can do a fine job with it. Remember, safety first. Always use quality safety glasses when operating power tools. Now hold the trigger steady on the shelf at about a 5-degree angle and remove a small amount of tail material. It's always best to grind and fit the trigger 5 times or more than to do it in one cut and have it too short. If you grind too much, you will have made a very expensive piece of scrap metal. So small amounts and test fit after each grind. You may want to practice lining up the parts and the stone a few times before turning on the power. The next way to grind off the tail is with a belt sander. Safety glasses first. Now you do it the same way you did on the bench grinder, slowly and carefully. If you have a surface grinder handy, this is the best way to do it. You still need to go slowly and carefully, however. So far, we have been using a large pin Colt type trigger. The small pin models are the same other than the tail. The small pin has 2 tails and you will need to grind them down evenly. As you can see with the surface grinder, it's no problem as long as it is properly fixtured. If you are using a bench grinder or a belt sander, you just need to take your time and hold things steady and go slowly and carefully. Well, I've put everything back in the receiver using the original pins, of course, and I am now able to get the selector switch in. However, when I hold it at fire position, the hammer still won't release. This tells me that the tail is still too high and we need to trim off a bit more. So let's pop all these out again and head back to the surface grinder. All right, well, we go check for a fit. All right, let's check the engagement this time. I'm gonna hold it in fire like before. Oh, and there we go. It fires, and that actually feels just about perfect to me. Let's flip it to safe and make sure that we have proper safety engagement. Now, we are going to check that again after we put the pistol grip and detent back in. With the magic of the video camera, it fit this in just about 2 attempts. In reality, it'll take more, like 4 or more, to get this perfect. But you don't need to watch me walking back and forth to the surface grinder that many times. It's not that bad if you take your time and do a good job. It'll only take you about 20 minutes to complete. With all this installing and removing the parts, you can see why we use the pins that came with your rifle and not the larger pins supplied with your MK2. It just causes too much wear. All right, now we're going to get into the final installation. All right, now that we have everything in this trigger set up the way we want it, it's time for the final installation. All we're gonna need is a soft face hammer or a small metal hammer and a punch. I'm gonna stick with this guy. And a screwdriver for your pistol grip, or the Allen wrench if that's what you have. Grab your new pins And now this next step is pretty important. You want to make sure that you drive them in from the left side in. Take your hammer and punch. We're going to first remove the hammer. Now when you get to the trigger, only drive it out part way. Take your original, or take the provided pin, and since it's lined up, it should go into there pretty easy. Now you're going to want to take your soft face hammer and drive it in. And there, your trigger is in there. No wiggle. Perfect. Now we're going to put the hammer back in, using the original pin, of course. It's much easier to try to do it this way than line it up and have the thing pop out and get you in the eye. Same story as before. Drive it out about halfway. Now grab your final original pin, included pin, excuse me, and you're going to notice that there's some grooves here on one side. These must be inserted last, and again from left to right, very important. This is so that the groove lines up with a small circle clip in the hammer sleeve, and this just keeps everything captured and makes sure it doesn't float around. Once you get it lined up and in there, give it a couple of whacks with your soft-faced hammer, and there you go. It's in there with pins that will not travel or walk or wiggle at all. Keep everything nice and snug. Next, we're going to put the safety selector in. There you go. Flip it over on your side. You're going to grab the detent and the detent spring, as well as a pistol grip. As you're holding the selector switch in there, drop the detent into the detent hole, right in there. Now take your pistol grip, insert the detent spring into the detent spring hole. Get everything nice and lined up here. All right, everything is firmly in there. Pistol grip is on. Safety selector works. Let's check the engagement one more time. On safe, it works just fine. Now flip it to fire. Hammer releases with exactly as much over travel as I'd like in there. With that done, that's all there is to it. You now have a Milazzo Krieger MK2 two-stage match grade trigger completely installed and custom fit to your firearm. Now that you've got everything installed in your receiver, we're going to go over some cleaning and maintenance instructions. For cleaning, I recommend Hoppy's number 9. And all you need to do is take a cleaning rod and cloth and wipe everything out in there. Easy enough. For lubrication, I recommend EWL Slip 2000. and a lot of it. This trigger is thirsty and it likes to run wet. Disassembly, I'd like to add, is also unnecessary, as the pins are press fit and you don't want to be removing them that often. It's going to cause excess wear on your receiver. Now, as far as break-in time goes, it's going to feel smooth to begin with. But after 75 to about 100 rounds, it's going to feel as smooth as glass. This particular receiver has had about 2,000 or 3,000 rounds downrange, and it is as smooth as anything I could ever imagine. Well, that concludes this incredibly exciting trilogy on how to install your MK2 trigger. Now that you got it in there, go take it out to the range and try it out. Any further questions or purchases can be made at our website. You can find everything you need there. And on behalf of the Wisconsin Trigger Company, I'd like to thank you for your interest in the Milazzo Krieger 2-stage match grade trigger, and also for watching this video series. So thanks again, it's been fun.